Hi, everybody. So just to build on that a little bit, back in the 1991, I got a degree from UC Davis in psychobiology, or the body-mind connection. So these kinds of things are a long-term interest of mine. And about 6 years ago, I discovered a podcast called Happiness with Gretchen Rubin, and really started diving into the science of happiness and joy, which is becoming a much more common thing. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm going to share with you today. I figure out how to, there we go. So our agenda for today is we're going to talk about what joy is. So what does it mean to you? The science behind joy, some principles of joy. We'll do a little joy practice, and then talk about how you can use these concepts in the classroom. So the first thing, and so this part is a little bit interactive, and I had Karen set this up as a meeting instead of a webinar, so that feel free to type stuff in the chat, and if you have a question, feel free to interact. So what does joy mean to you? Is it a feeling that gets evoked by something? Is it an action? Is it something that you do? Is it something that you have long term or in a moment? What kind of things help you experience or feel joy? So if you have just like one thing you can think of just off the top of your head, type that in the chat. Or you can unmute yourself and just say it. So Karen, what's one thing for you that brings you joy? And I have to say, my joy, like right now, just when Electra and I did our kitty unicorn ears, like that made me feel joy.
I'm working in my yard, actually, just like my hands in the dirt and like planting something brings me joy.
Yeah. Oh, and like COVID right now, oh my God, I would love to see my son and give him a hug. That would make me incredibly joyous at the moment. Making music, laughter. Awesome. So we all know what joy is to us. So the question is it something that you can foster yourself? So why would we want to do that? Why do we want to feel joy other than it's awesome? So the research that they're doing now shows that joy actually promotes a healthier lifestyle, boosts your immune system, it fights stress and pain, and it supports longevity. And it does that by when you feel joy, it actually stimulates the parasympathetic part of your autonomic nervous system. And that's kind of your rest and digest system. So when you're feeling joy, it does things like releases dopamine and serotonin, which we know are the feel-good neurotransmitters. It increases your circulation. So sometimes if you feel joy, you might flush, or you feel kind of warm. So all of those are good things that happen to our body. That parasympathetic nervous system, we also know, and I'll just touch on this real quick because immune system is really important these days. Our immune system is actually in our, a lot of it's in our gut. And so when we feel happy, it stimulates that parasympathetic nervous system in our brain, which sends messages to our gut that like, hey, everything's good. And that helps to increase your immune response so that you're not having inflammation, but you're having a positive response. So that's how that happens. And I have a bunch of resources at the end of this if you want to dive a little more into the science around that. So a few years ago, I discovered an amazing book. So the book is by this woman named Ingrid Fattel Lee, and it's called Joyful. And I have her show you this at the end. But she came up with these 10 different areas of joy. So that's energy, harmony, abundance, transcendence, celebration, play, freedom, surprise, and magic. And so those are the areas we're going to talk about. Yes, and I love what Troy is saying, that joy is different than happiness. Happiness is more of a long-term thing also, and dependent on other things. And joy is your personal response. It's something that you create yourself. Okay, so let's start with energy and abundance. So energy, the elements of that are saturated colors or things that are neon, fluorescent, yellow, sunlight, think light, bright, dynamic. And abundance is also kind of a color thing, but it's more different types of colors. So multicolor, polka dot stripes, think confetti, layered patterns and textures. And then when I go into the classroom, we'll talk more about what those look like in a classroom. So this part is, we're just going to kind of cover what those are. And if you have any questions, again, come up. So Karen was saying she loves being in her garden. So greenery, being out in nature, that is the joy of freedom that you feel. And you can create that in a classroom by having some kind of open space, having a white wall, or just somewhere where you can rest your eyes, bringing plants in, that kind of stuff. Harmony is when you have a repeating or a geometric pattern. So fractals, if any math people out there are familiar with fractals, that's the picture that I put there. It's a repeating pattern that gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So any kind of symmetry, whether it's two-sided like a butterfly, or radial like a seashell, but repetition and rhythm are parts of harmony. And then we have play, and play is, think of like baseballs and hula hoops and all those things that we throw or we use as toys, bubbles, squiggly lines, polka dots. That's the kind of play element. And then we also have surprise, and surprise is contrast. It's things that we don't expect, or it's a burst of joy. It's like, so my mom right now, my father passed away last year, and he had cards that he had hidden away for her all over the house. And every time she finds one of those, it's like this amazing joy that she has, this surprise that he was thinking that far ahead. That was pretty cool. Hiding and revealing. Oh, my own personal one for this. I got into my car one day, and my husband and I love the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. And he had purchased a little tiny bobblehead baby Groot and put it, he put it in my car. And so I got in the car, and this little baby Groot was bobbling at me. So like little silly things like that we do all the time. Transcendence, so think clouds, light, sky blue colors, objects and materials that are really lightweight or see-through, or things that draw your eye upward, like balloons or mobiles, that kind of thing. Bringing magic, so optical illusions. Our brains love optical illusions and trying to figure those out. And then when you see, oh my gosh, there's two different things here. Iridescent, so that kind of shimmery pearl, mica kind of things, mysterious lights and movements, translucent colors, so things that are kind of see-through again, defiance of natural laws. So I was a science teacher, middle school science teacher, and you can do a lot of cool things with magnets that kids are like, oh my gosh, how is that happening? Oops. And then the last two are celebration. So celebration is sparkle, glitter, things again that shimmer, and there's some overlap with a few of these. Bursting star shapes, oversized objects. So think of, there's places, tourist places that have those giant chairs that you crawl up into and you take your picture, and it's just like a silly, fun kind of thing. Doing any kind of music and dance in the classroom. That's how you can use celebration. And then the last one is renewal. And so those are, think of things that, seasonal elements that they come around every year or are cyclical. S-curves, spirals, flowers, I like to use things like butterflies or, chrysalis, that kind of thing. Anything that represents renewal or kind of a cyclical. Okay, so Karen tells me I get 10 minutes for each part. So that was kind of our overview of kind of what the presentation that I'm going to give you on joy. So now we're going to do a few practices about joy. So one of the things that they have found is that, and I love this acronym that I did not make this up. I totally stole it from somebody else. But somebody that I know came up with the acronym of joy is just open yourself. So part of joy is being in the moment and really being cognizant of what's in your surroundings and being present. So like just looking around right now, what's something that you see that might have one of those elements that we saw? So in this picture, we've got some pops of color. We have some repetition too with the different reds that are there. We have a little bit of transcendence because the very light see-through cabinet there is reflecting light as well. So, we've got a few things that are there. So what do you have in your environment right now that brings you joy? For me, it's all of my art behind me, which is very colorful and lots of pops of color. And I like to pool them all together in one place. So that helps to feel very abundant when you have things grouped together like that.
Now you've explained why I like black and white patterns so much, Wendy, and I have them all over my house. So you've helped me figure out why they bring me joy.
That's contrast. Oh, kids back at school. That's awesome. Green grass. Yes, I live in the desert, so grass is, other than golf courses, which I don't frequent. Sunflowers. Yes. Kitties. I have several kitties back here. Poppies. And I didn't add in a practice for this, but there's a lot of research because Karen told me that you had done a gratitude mindful Monday a few months back, but thinking of things that you're very grateful for also helps to bring joy. So joy and gratitude are really connected to each other. Oops. So we're going to do one more joy thing. And so this is called a 5-5-5 meditation. And you can actually use any word for this, but joy is my favorite word to use. And we're going to do the full 5-minute meditation for this. So it's really simple, very simple. So we're just going to think about breathing in joy. And then breathing out anything that blocks our joy. And we're going to do that 4 more times. We're going to breathe in joy. Breathe out joy. Blocks to joy. Breathe in joy. Breathe out blocks to joy. Breathe in joy. Breathe out blocks to joy. And then we're just going to kind of take a couple regular breaths. We're going to do that 4 more times. And by the time you get to the 4th one, it's like you are just breathing in solid joy. So let's do the second round. Breathe in joy. Breathe out blocks to joy. 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 I can't remember if that's 4 or 5. We'll take a break there. And we'll do the third round. So breathe in joy. Breathe out blocks to joy. Breathe in joy. Breathe out blocks to joy. Breathe in joy. Breathe out blocks to joy. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in joy. Breathe out joy. Okay, 2 more times. Breathe in joy. Breathe out blocks to joy. 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 In our last round, breathe in joy. Breathe out blocks to joy. 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 And our last time, breathe in joy. Breathe out blocks to joy. So hopefully that helps feel you a little bit lighter, maybe a little bit more joyous, and maybe you feel a little more joy in the rest of your day. And so our last part, how can we bring joy in the classroom? And I think, and I'm speaking this as a secondary teacher, I think elementary teachers are inherently better at this, but we need to think about this as secondary teachers also, because we want all of our students to experience joy. So what can we do in these 10 different areas? So if we want to bring in energy, we can do pops of color, and you can do that with a pillow, or you can do that with, like in this classroom, the bulletin boards that you put up, or you can bring in decorative lighting. I have it turned on. I have a decorative lamp behind here that just makes me happy. You can have light colored walls. And I know a lot of times we can't choose what colors our walls are, but putting some paper up if you're allowed to. If you have windows, good for you. Keep those open sometimes so you can let some light in. The abundance. So bringing in patterned fabrics, adding art into your classroom, using different kind of textures, having a rainbow or multicolors. So it's just all those different colors that you can bring in. Bringing in freedom, we can do that with having plants. So that was like the nature one. Displaying natural objects, seashells, driftwood, rocks, having nice smells in your classroom, makes it smell fresh, because we know kids are stinky, especially after recess. Relaxing. Oh, and I had 6th graders. I think 6th graders are a class of their own. Relaxing nature sounds, if you want your kids to relax a little bit, being able to hear birds chirping or fun things like that. Or if you can just let them go run around outside for a little bit. Bringing in harmony, so grouping similar objects together. So something that I like to do in my house is I try and have all of my books, especially the ones that are the same color, I put those together. Or if I have any kind of, like I said, art, I kind of group that together. So it's almost like this gallery feeling, and that brings in also abundance as well. You can use mirrors for symmetry, or like this classroom has these little mobile things that are up here that kind of bring in that lightness. Dancing can also bring in harmony, music, that kind of thing. Play, having balls, hula hoops. I used to have students would bring me toys. So I had this whole toy collection because I taught physics. They were all toys that had some kind of physics component to them. So we had a play area in the classroom and this was for, 8th graders. So they like play too. I also used to do units on bubbles, which are amazing for teaching different structures in biology, but I did that with 3rd graders and I did it with 7th graders in different ways, but bringing those in is great. Bringing in surprise. So Karen mentioned that she likes contrasting colors, black and white she has in her house. That is an element of surprise. Having quirky objects in your house. We have little, my husband and I like to play. So we've got the child from The Mandalorian. We've got Groot. We've got all kinds of silly toys and stuff. And we have no excuse because all our kids are gone, but someday we'll have grandkids. Transcendence, using light blue colors. That's kind of like cloud gazing and just looking up. That's also that using clear fabrics or things that are see-through. Magic, hanging a prism in a window so it makes rainbow colors all over the room. Using iridescent or pearl-like materials. Again, using mirrors. Celebration, again, easy to do for younger grades where you've got usually a rug area for kids to sit on. Obviously with COVID, some of these are not going to be doable for a while. We'll do the best we can. Breaking a piñata, playing music, dancing, and then renewal, having flowers in your classroom. They don't even have to be live flowers. You could have flower motif, flower art. Using spiral accents, and then decorating for the holidays or seasons, planting a garden, all ways that you can bring in those different aspects.
Target has $10 bubble machines, and if you're back at school, maybe you could have a bubble party. We've been doing that at home.
Yeah.
Pretty abundant. There's like hundreds of balloons or bubbles blowing everywhere.
Well, and I don't know about what's going on in your districts, but I know the ones that I work with, the kids that are coming back, that they're telling the teachers, just focus on social emotional, help them feel joy and just playful at being back in the classroom and don't worry about the curriculum. So I think it's very timely to be talking about joy when that's really what we want kids to experience when they're coming back in the classroom right now. So one of the things, Karen put some things in the Google Drive. This was something that I drew a while back, that it's just a 1-page PDF that you can print out to remind yourself what all these things are. And it has the kind of words around them. So energy is vibrant, colorful, warm, bright. Transcendence, light, elevated, airy. Harmony, patterned, balanced. It has all those things on there for you so that they're easy to remember. And then the last page. So the elements that I shared with you are part of this book called Joyful. And she has a website called The Aesthetics of Joy also, that talks about these elements and how you use them in a physical setting. And then I've got a few websites there you can go look at. Brene Brown is the one who talks about the relationship between joy and gratitude. And if you've never been to the Greater Good Science Center that UC Berkeley has, they have so many resources there for SEL for students and just general happiness. And they have a whole place just for educators. And they even do a summer institute on happiness and joy for educators to be able to go back and use those in the classroom. And then the article at the top there went from the bottom up, because surprise, it just has some of the science around that parasympathetic nervous system stuff that I was telling you about. And I don't know if you guys have any questions. I finished a couple minutes early.